Welcome to Love in Life, a guide to a positive mindset. My aim is to show you that the key to a happier and more positive mind is to love the life you have. We will look at tips and tools you can use to improve your mindset, and the best thing is, we'll all be on this journey together. Welcome back, everyone. What a week I've had. So, obviously, straight after I recorded last week's episode, I headed straight off to London and spent the night in London watching Fran and Mart's One Night Stand. So I think I mentioned last week it's Francesca Amber from Law of Attraction Changed My Life and Mark Tweedy from Canny Crystal. So if you haven't heard their podcast, then do head over. I thoroughly recommend them. They're the two other podcasts I regularly listen to. And yeah, I had a lovely time. Me and Hayley went to London on the coach, stayed overnight, and then the following day we just mooched around London for the day, clocked up about 25,000 steps, but it was just lovely to spend a bit of time together and doing what we both love, which is lots of walking, lots of eating lovely food, drinking coffee, and yeah, just chatting. So it was just so good for the soul. Today, I've got another guest on, and I'm going to introduce her shortly, but she's the author of the book Your Design Personality at Home, which is a book that combines psychology and interior design, which, if you think about it, interior design, our homes aren't just about what looks nice. Like, it has to suit our personality. We spend most of our time, certainly a lot of our time, at home, but our homes are our sanctuary. Our homes are the place that we should feel safe and happy and content. And if you haven't got the environment around you that suits what you need for your personality, then you are not going to be happy and safe and content. So this for me is a really interesting book, and from reading it, I have learned so much about myself, and it's such a good tool to have when you are designing different rooms in your house. So here we go. Here is my guest for today. I hope you enjoy. Michelle Armitage is an interior designer who I met at a women's networking event that she runs. I met her just as she was in the process of promoting her book, Your Design Personality at Home. I was so intrigued when I first heard about her book, not only because I love interior design, but I'm also about learning more about yourself and really knowing yourself, because I believe that's how we can truly live our best lives. She probably doesn't realise quite how much, but she's a massive inspiration because she took the plunge and completely changed careers in her mid-40s. And now she's gone and written a book. So this is what we're here to talk about today. So without further ado, hi, Michelle.
Hi, that's lovely. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, you're very welcome. You are a massive inspiration, and that's something I talk about a lot as well, is sort of feeling stuck around that kind of age. Anyway, I'm going to talk more about that later on in the episode, but to begin with, tell us a little bit about your story and how the book came about.
Okay, so it is linked to the career change. I gave up a head of HR job and I took the summer off. And by the autumn, realised I wanted to train to be an interior designer and signed up for a course, a really good course with KLC, who were based in Chelsea Harbour. And I went from HR as a very practical and essential part of business life, and interior design was just something that always looked really glorious and really beautiful and slightly out of reach. And as I got to my late 40s, I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a go at that. And people told me I have a bit of a flair for it. So yeah, so it was so exciting. It's about 8 years ago now. Anyway, the course was really good, but it was very visual, and I was surprised there wasn't. My first degree is in psychology, and I was surprised there wasn't more psychology in it. there's a lot about understanding the client, getting the client brief, understanding, there's lots of, actually it's quite complex interior design. There's a lot to think about. Um, and I was looking for more depth in the psychology of understanding people, and it really wasn't there, not on my course anyway. And so I started to look a bit further afield, and I came across, and I didn't come across it straight away actually, a field called environmental psychology. And environmental psychology, if people haven't heard of it, is the study of the human being in the environment. So it's how we think, feel, and behave around space and design and natural world and the built environment. So it feels to me like that's a really neglected space.
Yeah, it's such an obvious thing to talk about as well, actually, isn't it, when you think about it?
In art and architecture and interior design, the psychology of the space, how a space collectively makes us behave, feel, it's about community. And there are pockets of understanding across, say, the last 200 years. There's not a lot of depth or chat about it. So I was intrigued, and I remember particularly looking for a book, and it was a very expensive book, and my dad bought me it for my birthday. So and then I started to look at some of the original research just to educate myself, really. And I did a WI talk about it, but a friend challenged me and he said, Michelle, I thought you were going to write a book about this. So at some point, so in 2020, I took on a part-time job back in HR, pay 3 days a week to pay the bills so I could focus on writing the book. And then lockdown happened. It's really funny. 2020, that was my first draft. I wrote the first draft when everybody else was struggling. I was doing what I'd already planned to do.
Yeah, perfect timing.
And actually I was furloughed, so that helped even better.
Yeah, amazing. In the book, you talk about a Danish study where people from around different countries in Europe were surveyed. And the study found that 73% of people who were happy with their homes were also happy in general. And so clearly our homes influence our day-to-day happiness, even more so now that more and more people are working from home. And I talk a lot about positivity, positive mindset, raising your vibration. So what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is generally trying to be more positive?
In terms of their home environment? I think the first thing, which is the core of the book, is understand your own needs. We have to wear masks through life. We have to pretend. We have to do things we're not that comfortable with. That's part of life. But I think when you're at home, you really want to be able to take those masks off and just relax. And if you're still keeping up with the Joneses, as a classic phrase, or doing things that you think of, painting the colour on the wall, the colour you think that people think are going to, it's kind of like, what do other people think? That don't worry about that. You want to be at home and have your home to suit you. So before you look at your home, kind of look at yourself. And if you're not sure what environment you like, go out exploring and go into different cafes and different restaurants, different hotels, and just understand and notice the impact those have on you. And then look at your home or other people's houses. Do you see what I mean? It's like a bit of exploration in it if you're not sure. Or read my book and you'll get a step-by-step. Definitely recommend that. There are some things though that aren't personality based. So things like plants are good. Everybody responds well to nature and bringing nature into the home. There are things about using natural materials, using cleaning products that are healthy for you, opening the windows, letting fresh air in, not having things too cluttered, but not worrying about it. It's not about being a minimalist, but just keeping kind of fairly good clean routines, which I'm guilty of because I have a very low conscientiousness on the personality traits. So I love a tidy house, but I don't spend a lot of time tidying it. So
what does that mean? Just explain that a little bit more. Low, did you say, on the conscientious?
So that's the conscientiousness of the trait is about rules and regularity and planning, and I kind of think of it as the neat and tidy trait. And in the book I talk about the Mr. Men book, Mr. Messy, and there's a pair of neat, tidy and neat, and we all know people, and some of your listeners will be people who like things very ordered and regular, and they couldn't possibly go to bed without washing up or putting
Yeah.
tidy things in the dishwasher or wiping the surfaces.
Yeah.
And I'm not that person.
No.
I'm the person that checks the bathroom before visitors come round and runs the hoover around last minute.
Yeah.
It's actually quite good to have guests come, because I like having guests, and I'm quite agreeable, and I care enough about their comfort to make sure my house is tidy for them. So I do a lot of things last minute. So I'm not really good at planning. I'm very last minute. So I like a nice environment, but I've always got creative things on the go. So it's low down on my to-do list. And I can get quite overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
So I have to put strategies in place so my house isn't totally chaotic.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, because I was obviously throughout the book, you've got quizzes. So obviously people can identify a little bit more about themselves that they didn't necessarily know before, which is one thing I know I've told you before. It's one thing I really loved about the book. It's so cleverly interactive. And it just means that the reader just gets to learn more and understand more about themselves. And I loved learning more about myself. And it's funny because I always classed myself, and I always told people that I was an introvert. And that used to really surprise people. And then taking the quiz in the book for the introvert and extrovert, I was smack bang in the middle.
Okay.
So I guess that makes sense to me, actually. Now I think about it.
There's something I haven't talked about in the book. There's something called, I heard it described, and I'm not an expert in it, but Marianne Keyes, a lovely author, was chatting about the fact that she's an introvert. I think it's all right. No, she's an extrovert, but she's not that sociable. She's out and about, and she likes experiencing things, but it's not necessarily related to people, because it isn't just about people, it's about stimulus. And her husband is an introvert, but he's a sociable introvert. I think what happens on the introvert extrovert scale, which is really about stimulus for the brain, people mix it up as to how sociable you are.
Yeah.
And you can be like, for me, when we're social, like we're chatting away now, I'm very chatty, you're very chatty, we're really interested, we're very engaged. So somebody watching us will think, oh yeah, look at them, they're chatty away, they're confident, they're extrovert. And it isn't really about that.
No,
it might be I like quiet time on my own to kind of just relax or read or listen to music. If I'm watching TV, I want to watch it on my own so someone doesn't interrupt it. So we're all, what's lovely about humanity is we're all so unique, we're all so quirky and different.
Yeah, that's it. And like you say, there's so many different scales that sit with each bracket, I guess, isn't there? Because like taking the quiz, I got my husband to do it as well. And because we've always said, I'm the introvert, he's the extrovert, when actually we both had, I had out of the 10 points that make up the quiz, I was 5. So I was directly down the middle. But he actually had more, he was actually more introverted than I actually thought he was. And that's obviously because there's so much talk about introverts and extroverts. And but it's only when you really start looking more into it, I guess, that you realize the difference in the scales. But what I was going to say about that was,
because I just want to clarify something for people on the test. So what I've done in the book is I've tried to make it, introduce topics and make it accessible and easy. If you really wanted to know more about introvert extrovert, you could there are some free online tests, or you could go to see somebody who's an expert in psychometrics, and you could learn more about it. So those tests in the book aren't proper psychometrics. They're taken from psychometrics, because I'm trained in about 5 different instruments. And I've deliberately picked the questions to raise awareness as well as give a bit of an insight. So, and within introvert extrovert, there are different elements. So there is a sociability element, and there is a need for quietness. And there are different aspects to it, like little subcategories within it. So we can chat afterwards, and I'll send you some more info.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's so interesting. It really caught my interest. I think I even did a podcast episode on the whole introvert extrovert topic based on that like 30-second quiz in your book. I just find it so interesting, and I think other people do as well.
Well, what's great is it got a conversation going. So you and your husband share a home, for your family, and you really want to make it work for all of you. And so understanding your personality in relation to your environment and different activities and different times of day and different moods and different personality traits means you can create the environment that you need, that everybody needs.
Yeah.
And introverts typically need time away to be on their own and do their own activity. So open plan living doesn't suit introverts. And, and if you have got open plan living, you might zone it out, or you might create territories for different times of day. It's all about those discussions, isn't it?
And it is really interesting, actually, because I always thought I loved the idea of open plan living. I love how it looks, but until you actually think about the psychology behind what that actually means to have open plan living, like you're always in each other's pockets then, aren't you? And that is why it is so important to understand the psychology behind it, because once you've knocked those walls down, there's no going back, is there?
I wonder how many people, when their children become teenagers, regret the open plan and start putting stud walls back in. It'd be quite interesting.
As long as they still got bedroom doors, that's fine. Thinking about introvert and extrovert and what that actually means for our energy levels, how would you say the decor in our homes has an effect on our energy levels?
Okay, so there is actually brain wiring relation to this. So the introverted brain has more going on already. And one analogy I like is an introvert is like they wear a fur coat, but the fur's on the inside. So it's all going on inside.
Right.
So it's really easy for introverts to be overstimulated. So the tendency is to have quieter environments, both in terms of colour, pattern, noise, think about all the senses, smells, activity, just movement and activity. The thing is, though, that I'm trying to explain in the book, and it is quite difficult because people are complex, is it does interact with other factors. So the openness to experience factor, which is about need for variety and love of change, will interact with your introvert extrovert. So if somebody's high in both, so they're highly extrovert, so that's high need for stimulus and lots going on to really please the brain. If you think of it like that, your brain wants stimulus, and they also want lots of change and activity. So someone who likes trying new things, going to the theatre, going to the cinema, trying different food at restaurants, that kind of person. Lots of different places on holiday. You start to picture a home that's got lots going on, and then somebody who likes things the same, likes things traditional, likes predictability, and likes time alone and likes time to be quiet. You could, just as I'm describing the personality, for me, I can imagine an environment that will please those people. So less pattern. So for the introvert, in general, less pattern, less colour. So pastel colours, neutral colours, black and white and grey. Soft colours are more pleasing. And the bright, bold colours are for the extrovert because they want that stimulus.
And it's funny, actually, you say that, because I noticed, and I had already decorated, we're working through our house, but the rooms that I've decorated already, there are some rooms that are neutral, and then there are some rooms that are a little bit more bold in colour. And it's really funny because I've done that completely without thinking, and which is lucky, really, that it does actually fit with, regardless of anybody else, but it does fit really well with my sort of both sides of the introvert and extrovert sides of my personality.
So you think about the activity. So designers really work with mood. Like, what mood do you want to create in the space? That's creating. So colour is one of the things. Lighting is one of the things. And typically, kitchens and dining rooms and social spaces will be decorated, professionally decorated, with more energy. So you're thinking about warm colours and more stuff, more activity, and that's because it's encouraging sociability or activity in people. So if you have a kitchen and it's interesting when you go into like a very serene kitchen, like an all white kitchen or a really clear kitchen, for me it doesn't feel like a kitchen. Because I really like kitchen. So really, so you walk into a space and you can just see it, but it isn't what you would have, because it just doesn't give you the activity sensation of what you would do in that space. I don't know if I explained that very well, but
yeah, no, I think you have. And it's funny because that's actually just made me think of something myself. Whilst obviously I used to think of myself as more of an introvert, but it's funny because my kitchen at the moment is there's nowhere for anybody to come and sit out with me. It's a decent sized kitchen, but the way that it's laid out, there's nowhere for anyone to come and sit with me. We've got a separate dining room, so there literally is nowhere for anyone to come and sit with me. And sometimes, like, I do get it, whilst I really enjoy my own company, and I, that suits the introvert side of my personality, working by myself, being self-employed, working at home but then when I'm out cooking in the kitchen, I'm like, well, this isn't fair. There's no one out here to talk to me. And I get really resentful about that.
That's really interesting, Lisa, because actually for you in your mind, what you're describing is when you're cooking for your family, is when you've come away from your quiet space and you're ready to be sociable.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And maybe that starts at the cooking journey and you want to share that.
Yeah, that does.
Setup doesn't let you share that. So if you were designing your ideal kitchen, it would have more, well, you'd have a breakfast bar and some stools around, and
absolutely
maybe have your kids there eating, chopped up bits of veg, and you might have
that's the dream. That's the dream, but
I can see that would, but somebody else might really like being a solitary cook. So everybody's allowed to have their own quirks within that personality trait.
Yeah.
The other thing about the introvert extrovert, it's a scale, like all of them are a scale. If somebody's more of something than you'll see that contrast. It isn't just one is an extrovert, one is an introvert. It's where you are on it. You see what I mean? So you could have somebody who's really extroverted and someone's in the middle, and the extrovert will see the person in the middle as really introverted. In comparison to them, they are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I'm sure you come across this an awful lot. But obviously, I mean, there's 4 people that live in my house. 2 of us are the parents, shall we say. So there are the 2 quite differing characters that live in my house, and the kids are obviously like a blend of both of us, I would say. But if there are 2 very differing characters on the personality scale at home, what is your advice to couples to sort of satisfy both personalities in the home?
It is tricky. And it's interesting when you work with couples, because there's usually a dominant member for the home, not necessarily for the whole relationship, for the home, a decision. And it's not always the woman. Sometimes it's the woman, but it's not always the woman. So I guess what I start to do is try and balance that out a bit. So get whoever's not being listened to as much by the fact that I'm a third party. If I'm doing consultancy, ask the questions of both of them. So what happens then when you're talking about a space? Because usually I'm brought in to redesign a space. Is
and be a mediator.
Yeah, you do end up being that, but not in a formal or a difficult way. But you'll ask questions, and it's a polite space, isn't it? So you've got both giving you answers, and you're making the notes. But quite often, one will look at the other and say, "Oh, I didn't know you thought that," or "I didn't know you felt like that." So I guess my advice for a couple without me there is to listen to each other and find out what's important, and then look at just really practical things. So what things are real deal breakers and what things can be compromised on, so that you don't end up with a bland middle wishy-washy space. Do you know what I mean? So it's that level of, I think, and it really does depend on the way the relationship works, that much of love in the relationship, of how you get people to understand each other's position and work it through. I would always encourage people to try and keep the bold choices and not bland it all down, though. I think that's what happens a lot when nothing gets through.
I guess it's easier to think down that sort of way. It's just easier to be sort of more neutral, to sort of please everybody, but that's not necessarily the case, though, is it?
Well, no, and this is the key thing, that if you're in an environment that really suits you, then it enhances everything. It enhances your mood, your well-being, your health, even performance. If you're, whatever your activity is, if you're cooking, working out, you see what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely. Do you
what I
think
mean?
there will be a second book? Are you planning a second book?
Yeah, I do. I've already outlined some chapters. You're the first person I've told that to.
Oh, that's exciting.
I did it a couple of weeks ago. I was just driving along and I was thinking about, I think because with the first book and the reception and talking to people, I've been thinking about different environments and then different audiences. So I've been thinking about the ideas for creatives. So people who do interior design, who do upholstery, who do, work in the creative sector. It's interesting for them to understand the psychology of what they do, but maybe to understand clients or to understand, why people resist making bold choices. Designers find it easy. And so, let's take an example. Say, like, look at Instagram. I look at Instagram. I love it. There's all these ideas.
Yeah.
I think it's great. And I'm surprised to hear from a lot of people that they find it overwhelming. And I think it's like they don't have that foundation stone of taste. So therefore, it's just too much. It's just everything, everywhere.
And I guess there's one thing liking what you see, but then actually knowing what that would mean to have that as part of your environment is a completely different thing. And I guess that's probably why people find it overwhelming, I guess, isn't it? Because they think they like something. But I guess you're the professional there, so to think down the route of, is that going to suit your personality? Is that going to suit your environment?
Well, a little bit. I mean, I'd certainly be guided by someone. I guess what happens with a designer, you end up with what aesthetically goes together and what jars. I've just been doing a bathroom design this week, and you think about all the fixtures and fittings in the bathroom. You've got to have consistency in shapes and style and form for it all to flow.
Yeah.
And where you put things, there's lots of little decisions that people make and think, oh, that works or that doesn't work. But back to the other book stuff. So I've got an idea with lots of chapters thinking about different environments. So public environments, you think about hospitals, what hospitals look like, schools, libraries, public spaces, and then different professional groups. So I'm just forming some ideas around that. And I might do it the other way with that and actually create courses on it and then build the book up that way. Because I feel like with this book, I've done the book first, and now I'm going to develop lots of other ideas that lead up to the book. Not everyone wants to read a 65,000 word book.
No, that's very true.
but the ideas within the book, so what I'm working on at the moment is so it won't be another book, but it'll be other content, online course content, to make the ideas accessible.
I wanted to just talk a little bit about the fact that you did change careers in your mid-40s, and it's quite, like you said, it's quite a difference in careers, isn't it?
Yeah, really different.
And people, I work with a lot with people who quite often feel stuck, need a change. And sometimes we, especially around that sort of age, like I'm 41, around like the age of 40, it quite often gets called a midlife crisis, but I like to think of it as at the end of a season. But a lot of people just feel like they have to put up with the way that they're feeling. So even if they do feel stuck in a rut, they think they're too old to do anything about it. And they don't have the balls and self-confidence, self-worth, to actually make that change. So as somebody who has done that yourself, what would you say to someone who is feeling that way?
Well, I'm probably going to surprise you here. I think everyone's different. So I'd really check out what their story was and where they were at with it, because some people are more stability and security minded, say than me. I'm quite a risk taker, so I'll start with that.
This is a psychologist and you speaking.
Yeah, I say I very rarely say follow me. It'd be like, well, where are you and what's going on for you? I actually don't feel that what I did was brave or risky, because I actually backed myself into such a horrible place. I kind of had no other option than to make a change. I had the combination of early menopause. Well, not early menopause, but the early stages, perimenopause.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 47. So I had a lot of ill health, untreated sleep apnea. So you combine a sleep disorder, which is serious, with hormonal changes and a very stressful job.
Mm.
And so all three of those were really over time, and it wasn't just 1 year, it was over a few years. I was really sick of my own complaining voice, and we'll just put it that way.
Mm.
So I kind of negotiated an exit from the job and had some time off. And then within that year had sold my house, which I could no longer afford. And wasn't actually didn't start managing sleep apnea then. Not for another 4 years, but I didn't. It's one of those things. It was literally I was ignoring it. I was like, I knew I had it, and I was really ignoring it, even though it was a major contributor to my health problems. I kind of wasn't seeing that. And I set off on a journey of like, well, we'll see what comes next, because I can't carry on just for the sake of my pension, just for the sake of a steady income. Because actually, I'm so unwell and so unhappy. It's just not a life worth living. So that none of that I don't think sounds particularly motivational or brilliant. I'm just trying to describe how miserable I was. And there was one picture I have on my wall, which is a dog leaping. It's a print of a dog. So my friend is a printmaker, and it's her dog Bella leaping into water, and she's looking sideways at. She's not even looking where she's going. It's just a leap of faith. And in the middle of this miserable time, I found this painting in a shop, and I had very little money, and I bought it and I had it professionally framed. It cost me £150. It was a ridiculous thing to do. But at the time I thought, if all I have is my car, a bag of clothes, and this painting, that's enough to start again. That's how it felt.
Wow.
So it makes me a bit tearful remembering it at the moment. My asthma at the time was really bad, and it was a cold winter, and I would cough until I threw up. So my health was just, there wasn't any chronic conditions, that just very poor health. And I was trying to walk to get fitter, and I was really struggling with it. So yeah, that was probably a low point. And within a year, I'd bought the cottage I live in now, and once I bought the cottage, I started to acknowledge that I had health issues, and I built that bit up. So actually, I think what I would say is that when you look back on a change, and everyone can think of a change they've made, in retrospect, it's really clear, and you can make it seem really shiny and really, really thought through and really organized. The reality is, when you're in the middle of it, for most people, it's quite messy. And you just got to have faith in yourself and move forward.
Yeah, because you never know what the right thing to do or not is, do you? You never really
I love
know.
Oprah. Oprah has some great stuff on this, which is, and actually I did read a lot of self-help books. And she talks about not being any wrong path. So whatever you're doing, even if you regretted it, it's led you to where you're going to be next.
I talk about that a lot as well. And it's like, as long as we always take one thing from anything that's happened, then that's sort of adding to our knowledge, really, isn't it? And learning from that. So would you say, just quickly, the dog in that picture, would you say the dog represents you leaping?
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing.
Sometimes you have to leap, and you don't know what you're leaping for. And I hear a lot of people talk about this. And if you think about your life, what is your life for? And when you start to head towards 50, you can start to sense the end of your lifetime, and certainly the end of healthy years and vibrancy. And I just didn't want to live another day or in the middle of the meeting where I felt like I was screaming inside. I didn't want that for myself anymore.
No.
So I guess that's where I got my courage from. Of just like, no, I might make mistakes. I might not like this next thing.
Yeah.
But it'll be better than thinking I didn't try.
But that is really inspirational. I know you think the whole story sounds boring, but that in itself is really inspirational, and it is a really brave thing to do, because.
And I am now in a really happy place. In fact, the other day someone asked me what my ambitions are for next, and actually it's more of the same. So it doesn't sound so dramatic or
Just out of interest as well, do you think because this is something I've talked about recently as well, but do you think the health issues that you had at the time were a reflection of the things that you weren't happy with or that you were uneasy with in your life?
Yes, I think so. There's something about sleep apnea. I do believe in spiritual root of
Hmm.
ill health.
Hmm.
And the sleep apnea is a respiratory disorder where your throat closes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot about, for me, about your voice and having a voice.
Yeah.
And I'm looking into all sorts of weird little things at the minute. I've been looking at ADHD,
Hmm.
women's diagnosis of ADHD in adults. Adulthood, lots of people telling me they think I've got
Oh,
ADHD.
yeah. I remember you saying that. Yeah.
I look, and actually, the more I've just been for a walk with a friend, and she's had an adult diagnosis, and I'm quite resistant to it because it feels like everyone's saying they've got it. But I have to
Yeah.
say, everyone that I know who's been diagnosed, they're all bloody brilliant. So it's like,
Mm.
it's a nice club to be in, I think. So, so from that perspective, it's fine. I've also been looking at something about the witch trials. I've got a book here about the witch trials, and I'm really interested in the vibrancy of older women and how over certain previous periods of history, older women's voices have been suppressed,
Mhm.
and phrases like witch and hag been demonized.
Mm.
But actually, a lot of the witches that were, and some of them believed they were magical, they were killed for no other reason than being great herbalists and healers
Yeah.
and cooks and wise women. So this is the phase I'm at in my life now, and it
Mm.
feels really exciting. It feels like there's loads to learn and grow into. So I do feel really excited about that. And I guess that's the journey of self-development. And I
Hmm.
see younger women in their 30s on the same journey, and they started 20 years before me. But you need to start where you start, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you is, was writing a book
Yeah.
always a goal of
No,
yours?
no. I literally wrote the book because it wasn't there. So I went off to research and curate my own course. That's what I started to do. Curate, okay, I like this course, but I want to add more to it. And on psychology and design. So I kind of started doing that, and I went off to find out all sorts of things about history over the years and things. And then I thought, really, this book doesn't exist. I should write it, and I should write it in a nice, easy to understand way. So yeah, no, I wrote it because it wasn't there,
Yeah.
rather than that I've always wanted to write a book. I started writing a novel about 15 years ago and never finished it. That's more Michelle's story. You say, oh, there's an idea, and then you do it while it's interesting, and then
Yeah.
halfway through you put it to one side, and then may or may not pick it up later. So
It's funny
no,
because I've always said I'd love to write a book. But I have no idea what I want to write a book in. I know the idea that will come to me one day.
yeah.
I've no idea what I want to write a book in. I'm a bit of a procrastinator as well. So like one minute I've got tons of ideas, and then the next minute I think, oh, there's too much going on. It freaks me out.
Yeah, hey Lisa, I think that's really normal. I mean, I've started loads of creative projects and not finished them. There
Mm.
was just something about this one there that just got hold of me, and at no point did I ever doubt it. I just knew there were good bits and bad bits, but I just plowed and put it to one side and left it alone for a few months, and then came back to it. It had 9 versions, and lots of people read it and gave me feedback, as well as professional editor people as well. So there's a whole, you've got to, whatever you do, and a book is definitely something that will take a lot of time. You'll get an idea. It's really the idea, I think.
Yeah.
And I
And I
kind of know,
guess, like you say, is again going back to that divine timing as well. Like everything sort of panned out to make you write that book, I guess,
yeah,
isn't it? In your little world,
yeah.
like I guess it panned out to make that happen for
The
you.
house I live in a quiet place, and then lockdown, which meant I couldn't see anybody.
Mm.
So actually for 6 weeks I got up. I did very unlike me. It was nice weather. Do you remember in
Mm-hmm.
March in the first
Yeah.
lockdown? I got up. Actually started in the April. I got up early. It was beautiful weather. I wrote 2,000 words every day. I made or a chapter, one or the other, and then I went out and I gardened. And I had that routine every day for 6 weeks.
How did you cope with that routine then? We're going off on something I didn't even
I
plan to
just,
talk about
at
now,
that
but
point, I think so we were all so stressed. It was just a pleasant focus.
and does that level of routine
Mm.
generally fit your
No,
personality?
no, no, not at all. No,
And
I'm very
this is
chaotic.
what I'm wondering. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can apply it to myself. And apparently in ADHD, there's something called hyperfocus. So we're very disorganized until we want to be focused and we've got an interest, and
Yeah.
then you can't pull us away from it. So
Ah,
maybe that was it. I know about whatever I know if I've got something I want to do, then everything else falls away, and I literally nothing else is in my head. I
yeah.
might even forget to eat.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And then suddenly you're hungry. You're like, oh, I haven't eaten all day.
That's actually resonating with me quite a lot, actually.
I know it's funny, isn't it? You think, is it a quirk or is it a condition? And as long as you're functioning in life, it doesn't really matter, does it?
And also, yeah, as long as if recognizing that helps you function and helps you develop and helps you better yourself. Because I guess that is what development is, I guess, isn't it? Is just constantly making things better and better
I
for
think one of the
yourself.
great things about getting older is that you have more confidence in just being yourself,
Mm.
hopefully. I was with someone recently and she said, I'm going to try and say this succinctly. And me and the other lady went, why? And she's like, oh, well, it's because she wanted to explore something, like just chat away. You will get there. You
Mm.
don't have to be succinct. And,
Yeah.
that's a good. And so I share that because it's like, why do we put ourselves into these somebody else's voice of criticism on us? And
Oh,
like, let's
don't, because
just be who we are.
I do that. That is one thing that I am, and I've openly shared this as well. So this won't be a surprise to anyone that is listening, but that is something that I do an awful lot is I compare myself to others. I um fear what other people will think about me. And that is something I'm really focusing. Belief coding is massively helping me with that and
Brilliant.
get into the root of it. But you know, just like
Well,
with
that's something I
everything.
had to work on. And alongside the book, I had to work on my self-belief.
Yeah. Oh
I
God, I can
genuinely don't
imagine.
know how I've done it, but recently I was heavily criticised by someone I hadn't met, and for whatever reason, that person just decided to lay into me.
Yeah.
And I'm talking really nasty stuff, and I didn't care.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a real moment.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I don't care. And I felt great actually, because yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I never care. If someone I really respect
Mm.
criticizes me, then that's there's a reason for it, isn't there?
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is that I've done. I've done something. Now I'm just like, okay, and maybe it's being brave and putting yourself out there and thinking, yeah. And I think somebody asked something, and I said, well, have you written a book? When they're trying to give you advice, have you written a book? It's actually quite hard to promote a book. It's a real long game, and there's a
Yeah.
lot to do, and I'm not doing anything right, but I'm doing my best. And to well, you haven't done this, and you haven't done that, and you haven't done the other, and you seemed a bit negative about that.
Oh
Thanks for
God.
that. Yeah, keep the ideas coming.
I mean, that I genuinely can't wait till I get to a place where if someone says anything negative, then it genuinely doesn't bother me.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's something, like I say, it's something I'm working on. But I did have, going back earlier on this year, I did have negative feedback on my podcast. And that absolutely floored me, so much so that, and now I look back, I can completely pinpoint this. I then had an infection in a tooth and ended up having to have a tooth taken out. And, I had toothache for weeks and weeks. And obviously that is linked to speaking your truth and things like that. So it absolutely floored me. But it did propel me
yeah,
into finding out why it bothered me so much. It propelled me into finding out more about myself. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
everything happens for a reason, in my opinion, and things like that. You know, again, like we said earlier, it's learning something out of every situation that you can then take forward. But
yeah. It
yeah,
was a gift, a horrible gift, but a
yeah,
gift all the same.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So,
yeah.
Michelle, how
Hmm.
can people work with you?
Okay, so a number of ways people can work with me. So I've written the book and it's available on Amazon, but also in local shops around in Bristol. I'm most active on Instagram, so if people want to ask me anything, they can come onto Instagram. I offer for residential clients, I offer a design coaching service. So I don't tend to design for people in their homes because I find that quite difficult. When I've tried to do that in the past. So now what I do is offer a design coaching service. So that's a number of hours packaged together. People might need help decluttering quite often. They want help sorting out what they want from their home. And they just need help and confidence to decide what it is they need to do.
And is that something that can be done online?
Yeah, you can do it on Zoom. So some people prefer it in bits and pieces, an hour here and there, and other people want more chunks of time.
Yeah.
So I've started to package it up just so people understand the cost of it. But essentially every person is different.
Yeah.
So that's design coaching. I'm also setting up a series of workshops. So if people want to sign up to my newsletter, so they go onto my website, Light and Frank, all spelled out, .com/links. So
I'll pop that in the show notes afterwards.
Yeah. So I've got quite a lot of things coming out in terms of workshops. I've only got 3 different things that'll be coming out before Christmas that people can book off to. And then any small business owners listening to you, I also do commercial design. So I look at design psychology in the workspace, because actually why businesses need places where colleagues come together, what the purpose is, the individuals within that workspace, the branding, the customer experience, the whole thing. Quite often the way the office or the premises are kitted out just isn't working.
Yeah.
So I go in before the fit out company to help work out the brief, and I involve the staff if there's a number of staff, which really helps with the engagement of any change program. So I work in that space too.
Yeah. Amazing.
It's quite a lot. I possibly am working in too many spaces, but that's another podcast.
Another book in the pipeline one day.
I'm building an empire.
Amazing. I love it. Go. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me today. And I will pop your website and a link to the book in my show notes as well. And I would highly recommend the book to anyone, even if it's just to find out more about yourself. And just that little bit like, oh my God, yeah, I am like that. Like, that's what I have loved throughout reading the book. And yeah, I will definitely be using it with the other rooms that I am decorating in the house, and definitely taking your advice on my kitchen when that finally gets done, whenever that is. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been really lovely. It's been really lovely to talk to you, and it's almost been like just a chat. So I hope everyone's enjoyed listening along. But that's it from us. I'll speak to you next week. Bye.